Hey, my name is Petra Cruz, and I'm obsessed with all things birth, but especially VBAC. I am a birth doula and mom who had a vaginal birth after 3 cesareans. In this podcast, we dive deep into the inspirational world of vaginal birth after cesarean. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring VBAC stories, practical tips from professionals who've championed the VBAC cause, as well as my personal journey and how it might help you on yours. From mindset shifts to evidence-based practices, you'll leave each episode feeling inspired and informed. Get ready to soak in the wisdom, embrace the strength within, and join this incredible VBAC community. This is the VBAC Junkie Podcast. Today, I have an amazing episode with Kayla Nettleton, who is a licensed therapist, business owner, mom of 3 kids, and coach for female entrepreneurs who want to support and guidance on their journey in creating an aligned business model so they can live the freedom-based life they've always dreamt of without sacrificing their own needs. So important. In her private practice as a therapist, Kayla specializes in helping big feeling women overcome anxiety, perfectionism, and people-pleasing tendencies so that they can live authentically. And I think this is so important because it relates so deeply to birth. And we actually really dive into this, overcoming anxiety and perfectionism and people-pleasing tendencies when we're planning this dream birth that we're hoping for. And also really diving into how the outcome of your birth does not dictate the type of person you are. And I think that is so important to emphasize. So, without further ado, let's dive in. All right, Kayla. So, I'm so curious, what brought you into becoming a licensed therapist to begin with?
Yeah, so I really honestly have always loved helping people. Like that has been a passion of mine is helping people. And one of the first kind of sparks in terms of maybe going into a therapy direction was my uncle's struggles with his own mental health disorder that I've kind of gotten to witness over the years. And so that was my first like real life experience in what the system looks like. And when I got into college, so I'm a licensed therapist and specifically I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So the reason I chose that specific path because it's very different than maybe the counseling route or psychologist route. Our studies is different. I had gone to college, and because I am such a uh, perfectionist overthinker, I wanted to make sure that I was making the right decision. So I went to this career counseling center that they had. I went to Baylor University, and this is something that they offered to students. And I took a bunch of like evaluations and personality tests, and the person was like, "Okay, based on these assessments, this is what you would be good at." And they were all different. It was teacher, nurse, lawyer, and social worker. And I can't remember what like the last one was, but those were like the top five. And I'm like, because I was already going into the field of psychology. That's what I had signed up for in terms of majoring. And I wanted to know more about, okay, what is this social work? He goes, well, you're in psychology, social work, you could do similar things. And he had asked me like why I was going into psychology. And I said, I wanted to go into counseling or I wanted to be a therapist. He said, you can do this too. Let's look about, what the differences are. And so one of the main differences was social work takes into account a wide variety of systems. It's like your environment, your person, the way you grew up. It's not just looking at like your brain and how that works. And that's where I fell in love and realized like I could do so many things in this field if maybe I didn't want to just do counseling because I'm definitely a person who loves to have lots of options.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I love that so much. And I didn't realize until you said it, but that is like so perfect in what we're talking about. Because when we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about like going into birth, like
Mm-hmm.
it's so much more than just like our brain. It's about
Yeah.
like how we grew up, how we were raised, what
Mm-hmm.
what was instilled into us like values and
Yeah.
beliefs. And that's how we end up viewing birth and going about birth. So, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, I think that is like pure perfection. So, I know you do help women. Obviously, you're a self-proclaimed like people pleaser. So, how do
Yeah.
you help women when, they talk about they're a people pleaser when it comes to their birth? Like, where do you think that
Mm-hmm.
particularly stems from to begin with?
if you like really look, think about all like the people pleasers that you can think of in your life. I bet most of them are women, right? That's not to say that there aren't men who are people pleasers, but this is really a personality trait of a woman. And I really think it stems from, as women, as girls, we're raised to think about other people. We're raised to not get in the way, to be nice, to think about others before yourself, right? Do like the golden rule itself is like treat others the way you want to be treated, but it's putting others first. So I think that's really where people pleasing stems from is we're taught all of these things. And as women, we're not taught how to take care of ourselves versus men, they are taught how to take care of themselves and how to de-stress and all of those things, which is why it can be so much easier for men to be able to put themselves first because that is directly taught to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, this translates so much into like when we're planning our birth
Mm,
because, we have like these authority figures that are kind of like we feel like almost like a parent telling us what we need to do because they
hmm
specialize in this specific niche that we're going to them to be seen for. And so, when planning a VBAC or your birth in
hmm
general, we go to these experts, we are listening to
Yeah.
these authority figures. And it's so hard to like kick those people-pleasing tendencies. So, is there
hmm
any ways that you like suggest people or, any tips you can give them to try to kind of get past those people-pleasing tendencies to have the birth that they want, to be able to not feel like they're tied to this, whatever this, their doctor tells them they need to
hmm
do. I mean, obviously, if it's like there's an actual health concern, but if it's just
Sure.
like, in general.
Yes. I mean, one, I have to put it out there. I would definitely find a therapist and work with them because this probably is not just showing up in your the birth planning situation. Like this is probably something that's coming up for you in all areas of your life. And this is just an area where you're noticing that it's a problem, but it's probably a problem in other areas. So I would very much recommend you seeking help from a therapist because they're going to be able to teach you ways to overcome these people pleasing tendencies. I like to say people pleasing tendencies because it's something that we can overcome. This is not something that's like with us forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of like the provider you're working with, as a people pleaser, I think it's really important to find a provider that you really feel comfortable with. And I know that there's maybe not a lot of providers that perform VBACs, but if you want to be more confident, you're going to have to find a provider who you feel comfortable with, who you feel is actually listening to you and that you're not just a number on their caseload.
Yeah, definitely. Because it does feel that way, especially when you go into these appointments and you're
hmm
allotted like 4 to 7 minutes with your doctor. So everything feels so rushed. And then they
Yeah.
kind of lead the appointment, and then you're left with more questions than you came in with. So that
Oh,
can be
yeah.
really hard, especially like if you said, if they're not like VBAC supportive, then that can make it even
hmm
harder. Like personally, I'm like, I've had to overcome so many people-pleasing tendencies in preparation for my VBAC, and I never found a
mm
VBAC supportive provider. So it was like I felt like I was going to battle for every
Wow.
single doctor's appointment that I went to. And that's
hmm
not conducive to having like peace and feeling
No.
good about your birth. It's like you literally feel like you're fighting at every appointment. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a great idea to, like you said, get involved with like speaking to a therapist, somebody that
Mhm.
can know your unique situation, your unique
Yeah.
childhood. Because I've even found, like, in all this work that I've done, so much of my people pleasing has stemmed from my childhood and,
Yeah.
situations that I've gone throughout my
Mm,
childhood. Everything, it was kind of like a step leading into these people pleasing tendencies. So
yeah.
it happens over time. It's not something that just happens overnight.
hmm
So I think that's important to realize. It's not
Yeah.
going to change overnight. It's a process over
Yes,
time.
absolutely. It
Yeah.
really is. It really is. And one thing too that I wanted to note, you said you you had to fight like the providers almost every appointment. And so if you don't get to choose a provider who is supportive of your plan, that's already bringing extra dread, extra anxiety to an already kind of high emotional journey that pregnancy is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt that completely. And I even like changed insurances and I saw like
Oh,
10 different doctors and different
wow.
practitioners throughout that journey. But, my situation was unique because I did have three cesareans behind me. So there's
Mm-hmm.
no actual solid evidence on,
Okay.
the benefits weighing the risks. So that's why I had a very unique situation. But now there
Mm,
is becoming more and more like practitioners that are willing to, you know, take on a VBAC after multiple cesareans. There's even like midwives, lay midwives that are willing
mm,
to, of course, some of these like are underground and they're not gonna,
yeah,
necessarily
unfortunately.
yeah, advertise that, but it is definitely possible. So yeah, but you're right. It does cause a lot of like
Hmm.
anxiety and fear and dread. And I don't recommend it,
No.
definitely keep searching if you can. Um,
Yes.
but it is possible, but it's not easy.
Yeah. And I mean, like, use your network, ask people if they know people who've gotten VBACs, do a search. I mean, on Instagram, really, like on social media, do searches for providers who are supportive of VBACs because when you find them and when you can connect with a provider that you feel safe with, it's going to be all of the difference.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously there's a lot of like fears and concerns that come along with VBAC because of the risks that are told to us. So, if a woman is having fears or anxieties, whether she has a supportive practitioner or not, like
Hmm.
how would you suggest that she deals with those?
Yeah. So dealing with the fears and anxieties. So it's learning to sit with some of that discomfort too, because oftentimes we just want it to go away, right? So then we're just pushing things down. And when we push down these emotions, these uncomfortable emotions, they just, they're there still, but we're just trying to avoid them and ignore them. And learning what is going to help you sit with this uncomfortable feelings is going to be so much better than just trying to get over them. Because
Mhm.
there's no really getting over them. Your body wants to process these things. It's trying to send you a message, and learning to be curious with yourself, curious with these things is going to be key.
Yeah. And so obviously, I love how you said like they're felt in your body because we
Hmm.
do like these fears and anxieties manifest into like physical like
Hmm.
anxiety or pains or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
have you noticed that a lot when you are helping women through these fears and anxieties?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it can lead to almost like levels of OCD, like having to do certain things, having certain compulsions. So because there's just this fear, if I don't do this, then this might happen. And so that's not healthy either. The ways that we help them through this is by looking at how are we, who is their support system? What has helped them when they've maybe experienced these types of feelings in the past? And looking at those, whether because oftentimes when we are going through a journey like this, journey through pregnancy, yes, it's there that we need to take care of ourselves, but sometimes that's still not something that we do because we're maybe so focused on work or there's just so much that needs to get done that although we know we need to take care of ourselves, we're not really incorporating things to take care of ourselves. So trying to make a list of what are at least three things that I know I can do that I already know help me to feel better or help me to feel good in some way and and creating a plan where you incorporate those things into a flexible schedule.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like something that definitely helped me was doing like daily rituals.
Mm,
And, it's not necessarily to say you have to do like an hour or 2 hours of a ritual. It could be 5 minutes. Like I did
yeah.
like 5 minutes of meditation, 5 minutes of
Hmm.
yoga, just something to help ground myself and help me sit in
Yes.
quiet because there can be so much noise, especially if you have multiple
Hmm.
kids and,
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah.
have a household, you have a job, like you said, there's so many things that want our attention. And just being able to like sit for those 5 or 10 minutes every day can be so helpful.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think that goes back to another point of being confident in the provider, in the place that you're choosing to give birth. Because if you're not feeling confident, you're already setting yourself up to have already a higher level of anxiety going in.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you want to have some sort of confidence so that because one of the things that you want to have in the back of your mind is my providers are going to do everything they can to help me and my baby. And if
Mhm.
you can't trust that, that's a really clear sign that you need to find another provider or another place to give birth.
Yeah, and that's so true because I have, had in-person clients that are planning a VBAC and their provider's not really supportive. And so they're having all these anxieties like, "Oh, my doctor said they're only going to be around on Wednesdays, so I have to give birth on Wednesday." And then there's so
Mm,
much anxiety surrounded by this day. And
yeah.
we all know birth, like you cannot predict it. Even if you get induced, an induction can take days. So you can
Yeah.
never be 100% sure on that. And just like releasing those anxieties and dealing with them is
Hmm.
so important moving forward. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting in this pool of anxiety, and that
Yeah.
translates to your baby too. Like they're going to be
Oh
sitting in
yeah.
that anxiety too. So, yeah,
Yes.
I think
That
that's
actually happened to me actually my third birth. So my third and last birth. So I know I hadn't talked about it, but I have not had a VBAC. All of my births were vaginal. So this was my third baby. So I felt experienced. I felt confident in my provider, in the process and everything. Well, my provider takes time off for religious reasons, and my the birth was supposed to happen by the time he got back. But things happened where the timeline was not quite meeting up. Okay. And so I had to make a decision. Do I go with the provider who I don't quite like because my provider wasn't an option anymore because he was on vacation. Do I go with this provider who kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies, but I know he's gonna do a good job, or am I gonna take my chances on the weekend with a random person? And I was like, oh, man. So I had to go with the provider that I knew was gonna do a good job, but I wasn't 100% comfortable with. And I hated making that decision, but I didn't want the other, like I wanted to be able to make that for myself. And it's hard because like my other options were were not great options because of certain outcomes that had happened with that provider with a family member recently. And so I was like, oh, just don't trust that provider. I just need to go with this one. So I had to make the decision to induce
what.
instead of chance like my water breaking and going into labor over the weekend. Because my provider would have been back like Monday or Tuesday of that week. But I was like, I don't want to go in with all of this anxiety. And then maybe the anxiety caused me to go into labor, right? So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you gave like such a great point because it's not to say there's a right or wrong way to go. Like if you want to get
Hmm.
induced, have at it. If you want to have a scheduled cesarean, do it,
Yeah.
because if you're going to have that fear and anxiety, like
Hmm.
it's just inside of you, then that could be worse than waiting for spontaneous labor. You
Yeah.
could have so much more fears and anxiety compared to the fears or anxieties that come with a VBAC.
Hmm. Yeah.
So whatever you decide to choose, that is the right choice. Like there is no like
Yeah.
specific, this is right for you, this is wrong for you. Whatever you choose is right for you.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And almost tying that back into like people pleasing. So I'm really glad that you brought this up because I think oftentimes how it's framed is having a natural birth is the womanly way to do it. And if you're not doing it naturally with no help and maybe even in the woods, then you're not a real woman.
right.
And I think that is just not helpful because there is best practices, but there is no right and wrong way for people to give birth. It's whatever they choose is right for them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because I have seen women that go unmedicated and have beautiful births. I've seen
Hmm.
women go unmedicated and hated their birth. They feel like they were
Yeah.
suffering. And like opposite, the same thing with epidurals. There you can have an incredible birth with an epidural or a horrible birth. It just
Yes.
depends on you, like, and what
Hmm.
you want. And it's not to push you in one way or the other. It's like whatever you choose, whatever makes you feel good. That's
Oh yeah.
great. That's
Yeah.
absolutely great.
And the reason I had brought up like tying this to people pleasing is because sometimes that will l- lead women to make a certain decision is, well, what is everyone going to think of me
Yeah.
if I choose to have an epidural, if I choose to, or what will people think of me if I don't choose to have a home birth, or if I don't choose this? And so those are the lines of questioning that is going through the mind of a people pleaser
Yeah,
instead
definitely.
of what is it that I need to feel safe and secure and at ease, as much as ease as possible during birth or, during that process for me.
Yes. Perfect. Perfectly said. I think that's great. So, obviously we're talking all about birth. So if they had their VBAC, but it was
Mm,
traumatic, or say they ended up having a cesarean and it was not what they wanted that VBAC. If they're
hmm.
experiencing some type of trauma or they did not receive like the outcome that they were desiring, what would be a good way for them to help process through that?
One way is allowing yourself to really sit with that grief because it's grief. No, you didn't in what I'm imagining is you had a successful birth and your child is with you and you love them, yes, but you are grieving this experience that you thought you were going to have and that was taken from you in some way. Or maybe because even if you still had that experience, maybe you wanted the VBAC. I'm trying to use your examples. You wanted the VBAC and you got it, but it was not what you imagined. That's still an experience that was taken from you because it wasn't your imagined experience. So being able to give yourself the space to grieve that experience. And because when we're talking about processing our emotions, it's really about feeling them and sitting with them. It's not about reliving the experience. It's really about sitting with the grief, sitting with that sadness, and talking to someone about what you wish that experience maybe would have been like for you so that you can process those or journaling about that experience. And this is not to say that that means you're ungrateful. It doesn't. We get to grieve in ways no matter what,
Yeah,
because this is still a loss for you, the loss of a hoped experience.
exactly. So, say that they did the journaling and they sat with their emotions, but they still feel like, I don't know how to get through this. What would you suggest that they do?
Hmm. I mean, if you are struggling with doing this, on your own, again, seek out help from a trained therapist, a licensed therapist, because there are, I mean, I know of some personally who are specifically like they are perinatal licensed therapists that specialize in helping women through these types of traumas, or they're niching in um working with women who have experienced birth trauma. So seek them out. I know they are out there. And if you are struggling and you're listening to this podcast episode and you're like, I cannot find someone, like you can reach out to me and I will help you because I love helping connecting women to therapists that are going to be the best fit for them.
Right, definitely. And, I do always suggest women because we don't always align with even like maybe the first therapist we see or even the
Mm-hmm.
second. So just
Yeah.
like trying out different ones if you feel like that first one is not really aligning with you, because
Mm-hmm.
I think there's so many of us out there. And even if you're a perinatal therapist or, a birth trauma
Mm-hmm.
therapist specifically, you might practice just a little bit differently than that
Yeah.
other therapist. So I think definitely looking at your options, and if that one doesn't work, I mean, it's okay to go to a different
Mm-hmm.
one. I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't want to speak for you, but I would think therapists understand like you're not the fit for everybody.
Yes, yes. And that is absolutely correct. And that that really is something that I think more therapists need to understand is yes, we are trained to help everybody, but we're not always the best to help everybody. Like the people I want to work with, I want to be confident that like, yes, I know that I can like help you get the results that you want, right?
Hmm.
And so if someone's like on a consultation call with me and I'm just like, I don't know, maybe I haven't helped someone through that specific struggle or something, that might not be something that's a right fit for me. But I have such a great referral network and great relationships that I will usually be able to say, like, you know what, I'm probably not the best fit because maybe I've never helped someone through this exact experience that you're going through and I've never experienced it myself. But, this person is going to be awesome for you. And if you want me to give you that referral, I can.
I love that. So, if women are stuck on the way that their baby came into this world,
Mm,
is there a way that you would help to like encourage these women or help them through that?
hmm. Yeah, it's really, really digging into what does that experience say about you? Because oftentimes we've created a narrative of because I didn't experience this, that means that means this for me. And really being able to dig into that
Hmm.
is how being able to process and move through that experience is going to be helpful because
Yeah.
you've created meaning out of it. And that's kind of where people will get stuck is now they're like, well, that means I'm this. And they're struggling for that. They're struggling with that. But in the moment, it's not always like at the top of our mind that we're thinking that. It's oftentimes like an unconscious label that we've labeled ourselves with. But we are just so stuck on that experience itself. And being able to say that label consciously out loud can really be helpful.
Yeah. No, I love that so much. And one thing that I try to tell my clients is, yes, we want this VBAC. We're imagining it to be like this beautiful experience, but the reality is not everybody gets their VBAC. And even if they do, it
Mm-hmm.
might not be what they imagined it to be. So I try to focus on the journey, not to negate what they're feeling. That
Mm-hmm.
is still valid what they're feeling from that experience, but
Yeah.
like focusing on the journey. What did you learn on this journey? How did you change? You
Mm,
spoke up to that practitioner and told them
yeah.
that is not what I want. And you were never able to do that before. Look at that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let's celebrate you. You grew a whole human. Like not everybody can
Absolutely.
say that. And then
Yeah.
this you're now taking care of this beautiful human. You are incredible. Like I just want to emphasize that it is amazing. Like, yes, all those feelings are valid that you're feeling, but let's still celebrate what you have
Mm-hmm.
done along the way and
Oh yeah.
after, because it's
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
Yeah. And oftentimes women who are struggling with this are struggling with it on their own.
Hmm.
So they're not talking to anyone about this. And when we're just thinking about this to ourselves, we get into a lot of confusion because there is no one there to tell us otherwise. There's no one else there that is like a sounding board, that is really bringing us back to like the reality. Because sometimes our thoughts will just go in a not helpful direction, and then there's no one there to stop it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know I definitely felt that way too. Like I felt like such a failure
Mm,
after each of my first three births because, my body didn't do what it was made to do.
mm,
And where did I put that? Inside of myself. So I had all of this guilt, all of this shame that I was letting weigh me down. And it felt so heavy. And I was like, lashing out, and I didn't even realize why I was lashing out. I was more,
yeah.
just like I had more anxiety. I was angrier and I didn't realize why. And, once I did process that along the way to my VBAC, I realized that's why. And I
Mm,
never talked to anybody about it because I was like, I can do this on my own. I don't need help,
yeah.
I can do this. I'm a woman. I got this. But it's just sometimes we do need help. It is so
Yeah.
helpful to talk about it, to speak it outside of you. That kind of releases it from like this
Yeah.
place of shame and guilt. For me, that definitely did. It brought all this darkness into the light, and I felt physically
Mm,
lighter, like mentally lighter. So I think just talking to anybody about it is so helpful. Even
it really
writing it
is.
down, like you said,
Hmm.
like writing it onto paper, literally putting that pen to paper and getting it
Yes.
outside of you can be
Yeah.
so cathartic in so many different ways.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. And when you're writing it and if you read it back, you can be able to say, like, oh, no, that is not right. Like, what was I thinking? Like, that's not helping me. That's not true. Because one thing to recognize is like our thoughts are not facts. They're opinions, they're thoughts, they're not facts.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, I also look at it in the way of, would I say this stuff to my child?
Yeah.
No, never. I would never talk to my child like that. I would not be like, you're a failure. Your body
Hmm.
failed. You suck. You're a horrible
Yeah.
mom. I would never say that to my kids. So, I feel like we have to be more gentle with ourselves
Mm,
too, because we
yeah.
deserve the same love and gentleness that we give to our children, our family, our friends. Why
We
is it we're
do.
beating ourselves to the ground when we're lifting everybody else up, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. Oh, yeah. And one thing I do wanted to know is it's not fair for women today to compare themselves to how women gave birth, thousands of years ago when there weren't all of these medical advances, because women back then giving birth naturally in the woods, in the wherever, they were more in tune with their body than we are as women now,
Yes.
because it was just a different time. So it is absolutely not fair to continue the narrative of this is just a natural thing. Your body will know what to do, but your body will only know what to do if you allow it to do it. And
Yes.
there's just so much that right now, if you're not in tune with your body, if you don't have this relationship with your inner self, with your like intuition, you're going to get in the way. And so that's why it's not helpful to say like we're women, like our bodies just know what to do. Sure they do, but we can still get in the way, and help is needed right now.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, you hit on such an amazing point because I'm creating like this VBAC birth education course, and
Mm.
that is one thing that I put into it is
Oh.
how to hone into your instincts,
Mm.
and how over time that has kind of been like beaten out of us. And it's
Yeah.
not because it's been tried to beat out of us. It's not intentional. It's because we do have a faster environment. We have all these technologies. We're
Yeah.
constantly do. So we're not honing into ourselves and listening to our bodies and like we used to, like you said, hundreds and thousands of years ago,
Oh
because
yeah.
just of the way our society is, and just because of like all the medical advancements, yes, our body does know what to do, but when we're put in a hospital and we're put on a timeline and
Yeah.
we have to give birth by this time, then that just like kind of pushes out all of our instincts and we can't hone into it because we have nurses
Mhm.
coming in every 10 minutes. We have doctors coming in every hour.
Oh yeah.
So it's like it's not conducive to even realizing how to hone into our instincts. So, oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful thing that you touched on. I love it.
And that's awesome that you're creating that course. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
thank
program.
you. Yeah, well, there's so much that I feel like I've learned along the way, and I want to help others
Mm,
because, I didn't think I had the power. I didn't think I had, the choice to do what I
mm,
wanted to do. I thought okay, here I go on this assembly line, and I just got to do what they tell me to do.
yeah.
And there's just so many little things along the way that help us to hone into ourselves. And that's like a real big focus of it is how to hone into yourself
Yeah.
and how to like block out all the noise. And,
Hmm.
just like a lot of it is like mindset. It's just about you. So that is like the focus. It's not, I mean, of course, there's stuff in there like, oh, here's some like labor positions, how to birth unmedicated versus medicated, how our body works, like the hormones and like positions for pushing and all that kind of stuff is included too. But like the main focus is like mindset.
Mm.
That is like my
Yeah.
wheelhouse.
I mean, in all honesty, like the process of giving birth, it really is hugely a mindset thing
hmm
and how we're coming into that journey, how our how we're thinking about that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And none of us know how it's going to unfold. It's so
Yeah.
different for everybody and it's so beautiful. And thank you so much for all of your wisdom and all of your tips.
Mm.
I mean, this has just been so incredible. And is there
No, I
anything that
really
you,
enjoyed it.
well, thank you. Is there anything you'd love to like leave the audience with?
Yeah, I mean, if I could plug in my podcast, that would be awesome.
Go ahead.
I if you're listening, you like really enjoyed this episode and you want to hear more, I host the Modern Moms Roadmap to Balance podcast where I talk to moms and other professionals who are moms. I really try and keep it to where I all of my guests are moms because that's really important because honestly, I don't think women can really understand what it's like to be a mom unless you're a mom. Um, and it's just a whole nother level. And it's just something that you can't imagine. And I'm not saying you have to be a birth mom, but just like if you're not caring for children in any capacity where you're one of their sole providers, it's just totally different. And so
hmm
that's why I have my guests. So the what my podcast is really about is about helping moms to create the balance that they want for their lives. Underscore that they want, not what everyone else is telling them, not what everyone else is doing, but the balance that they want in the way that they want it. And so I interview different guests that might have helpful ways to create balance or things that could help them make the balance in their life. And so I have a really great time with my guests, and I hope that you would also take a listen.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I've listened to like a couple episodes and I'm obsessed. I
Oh,
think,
thank you.
yeah, I think you should definitely head over after this podcast and take a listen because it is great. So if
Thank you.
anybody, you're welcome. If anybody would want to like work with you or, just like get into your world, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I am most active on Instagram at Kayla Nettleton underscore LCSW. I'm sure that'll be in the show notes.
hmm
But that's where I hang out the most is on Instagram. I post regularly. I'm in the stories regularly. So if you want to hang out there, you can also, if you're in Texas and want to work with me, me as your therapist, you can email me at kayla@kaylanettleton.com. And also you can find me on my website, www.kaylanettleton.com.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kayla. This was like such an incredible like podcast
Oh,
and
so
people are going to
fun.
get
Yeah,
so much value out of this. So thank
I
you.
hope so. Yes, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the VBAC Junkie podcast. Make sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show so that you don't miss an episode. And also, I have a free gift for you. If you would like to have a guide on how to prepare for a VBAC, head to my website at www.birthingcometruecom/VBAC guide. And all of this will be in the show notes, so you can just click that link and head there and download this free guide. I hope you have an amazing week. Until next time, bye.